The title of this lecture is Errors in Performance Evaluations, and it's a very important topic. Evaluation of performance is an important topic for almost all workers. You see, evaluating performance, it requires a manager that can be objective. A manager which, for example, uses critical incident logs to make judgments. Memory can fail and sometimes managers may not make the most objective decisions. Now, as objective as professional managers may believe themselves to be, there are errors which crop up in the process of management. A good example of this would be in regards to the ratings that are given to employees on performance reviews. You see, managers can make mistakes, and they especially make mistakes on performance evaluations. They do that surprisingly often. So, in this lecture, I'm going to discuss the several types of errors which can happen. And one of them is the distribution error. Then another is the halo error. Then we have the proximity error. And lastly, we have the contrast error. So let's talk about the distribution error. In this error condition, some managers will rate employees all within a particular range, say on the low end of the range, or in the mid-range of the scale, or on the upper end of the scale. And in these instances, the managers, they're only using a portion of the rating scale, and, well, that's not always representative of reality. So why does this happen? Well, we've actually answered this question before, and we've talked about the manager who rates everyone favorably, or rates everyone in the upper range of the scale. And we came to the conclusion that a manager would do this if they, for example, want to avoid conflict or a problematic situation and a confrontation. And next we have the halo error, not the halo effect, but the halo error. This error occurs when a manager focuses on one attribute or one ability, and that focus obscures or clouds their view of the employee's other abilities. For example, the manager may think the employee to be very intelligent, and because they have this conception and this focus on intelligence, they may automatically attribute other positive qualities to that employee, qualities that employee may not have. So for example, the employee may be uncommitted and lazy, but the manager will see them as committed because of the fact that they think that employee is very intelligent. And next we have a proximity error. The proximity error is surprising, and it's not immediately obvious. For example, we can have a performance evaluator that is rating workers on different set of dimensions, on a list of dimensions, and it turns out that the rating the evaluator gives on one dimension or attribute, it influences the rating that the person might give on the next dimension or attributes. So the evaluator seems to rate workers on different dimensions that are physically close to one another on the scorecard, or group the scores so that one dimension is rated close in value to another dimension. So this grouping effect on the scorecard, you have to avoid it, and you have to think of the dimensions separately and perhaps look away from the scorecard as you try to come up with a new score for a particular dimension. And lastly, I want to talk about the contrast error. Many of you will be familiar with this one. It turns out that managers tend to base their judgments by contrasting or comparing one employee versus another. Now, if a manager was to be analytical and objective, they would evaluate that employee based on real information, real data, not judging an employee based on a behavior that compares with another employee. But that's how it's effective for a lot of managers to do it. So we tend to contrast and compare with others. So I'm sure some of you may have already experienced some of this. Perhaps you've noticed a really good candidate at a job interview and perhaps you didn't want to go in right after them, fearing that potentially you'd be compared. Well, these behavioral comparisons happen at job interviews. They also happen during performance evaluations and in many other cases. So say an employee goes to a performance evaluation right after someone very good has been evaluated. Then the score given to the employee is likely to be a lot lower than they would normally receive if they had just gone independent and not in context or reference to anybody else. So as a manager, it's critically important to understand the effects that a good impression may give you and how that can actually bias you in the judgment of another person that you meet next.